Hello everyone, welcome to this review of Toys Jive. It's late here on a Friday evening. I just received this figure today. Unexpected actually. I thought I was going to sort of miss the Christmas rush, what with all the courier issues we've been having in the UK recently. Speaking of which, the guy knocked on the door from DPD and I think gave me about a nanosecond to reply before he started legging it up the drive. So I was actually lucky to get my hands on it. I was like, come on, mate, give me a chance, for God's sake. But thankfully, I was able to tackle him to the ground and retrieve the package. So here we are. Let's start, as usual, with a look at the box. It's pretty similar to every Fans Toys box, really, or certainly the most recent boxes. We have some product shots on the back there, and yeah, I mean, it's a box at the end of the day, isn't it? Not too much to say about that. I'll give you a look just so you can see what you get. You got the usual artwork on the front there. They commissioned some fairly decent artwork, and yeah, I haven't got too much to say about that, so let's get that out of the way. Inside the box, it may come as no great surprise to learn that you get this instruction manual, which takes you through the accessories here and the transformation process and a few other little bits and pieces near the end, sort of swapping the face out, swapping some of the weapons, stowing the weapons in alt mode, some of the options you have. I will say that these instructions, I tend not to use them now. I go for the Fans Toys videos that they post on their YouTube channel. They seem to be a lot easier to follow in terms of transformation instructions. So, you know, it is what it is, but let's get that to one side. And we also have the obligatory card, the sort of credit card size thing. I'm going to try and get that to focus. They never seem to want to focus. Nothing ever seems to want to focus on this system. Give me a second. Come on, focus. There we go. Right, we're there. Sorry about that. Okay, so there you go. I'll leave that up there for a second if you want to read the bio. Obviously, Fans Toys has its own continuity in terms of the bios. They stick fairly close to the established characteristics of the characters, but obviously have to stray for copyright reasons. And obviously we've got his tech specs there as well. But yeah, it is what it is. It's okay. I largely just put these back in the box and forget about them now, if I'm honest. I suspect most people do. Okay, without further ado, let's actually bring the figure itself in. And here it is. And I'm just going to move the camera down slightly because he's not the tallest bot in the world, and rather he was slightly better centered. There we go. Right, so there we have Fans Toys Jive in all of his glory. And I don't use that term lightly or mockingly for once. I actually think this is a really good looking figure. Yeah, I'm not saying it's the figure of the year or anything, but it is a really nice looking piece. And honestly, out of the box, my impressions are really favourable. There are a few adjustments you have to make out of the box. I will say that you have to kind of fix a couple of pieces back here and on the sides and stuff, but on the whole, it's not too bad, and they do sort of point that out in the instructions in the video. At least I haven't actually checked the instructions in the box to see if they do, but yeah, I mean, look at it. It's pretty obviously jazz, which is just what I want from a figure. You know, I'm a toon guy, and this really does look like jazz. I really like the color choices. Something I couldn't say about Fans Toys' last release, Phantasm. But this has gone with the sort of gunmetal grey stroke black with white, as you'd expect. It has the grey accents down here, which is correct. and the nice sort of translucent blue there. It's got a very nice sort of well, Fans Toys tend to do this, so they'll go pretty tune accurate for most, but they'll throw in a few accents which are slightly different. And this kind of metallic cyan here, that's that's just their little flair they like to do, isn't it? Rather than that being sort of a flat paint, it's kind of got lots of metallic specks in it, which it pops, it looks really nice, and it's true to the character overall. If we turn him to the side, you'll see that the overall silhouette is really nice. Really clean profile, I think. I've seen some comments online saying this backpack's not great, but honestly, what do you expect? It has to store some doors in bot mode. And if you look at the cartoon model, this backpack is pretty accurate to that model. So I don't think there's any real problem there. I think that actually is very accurate. And then where you're going to put the rest of the stuff, if not inside of that, otherwise, it's just going to be hanging off. Sure, without that, it could be closer to the body, but compared to some, it's really not bad, is it? So yeah, I'm not at all bummed out about that. I think it looks perfectly fine. If we move on round to the back, again, very clean. It looks nice, doesn't it? I don't have any major complaints about this. I think it's a really nice, clean looking figure. Just from all angles. Again, if I move it around to this side, just how clean the legs are. It obviously uses faux parts, which some people hate, I know, but as far as I'm concerned, it's integral to the transformation, and it doesn't really bother me in the slightest. I still think the figure looks great, and if it helps to achieve that more accurate look, then I'm all for it, to be honest. It's not like they're parts that have to detach and reattach in terms of the modes. So yeah, I think fair to say that I'm far more positive about this guy out of the box than I was Fans Toys' previous release. Moving on, let's do some articulation, shall we? Because otherwise I'll just sit here all day, talking about how I love the deco, which I think has been established. But the articulation is also pretty good from what I've seen. So the head here is on a swivel. You can get full 360 out of it. He can look quite a long way back. Obviously it breaks the sculpt, but it can be done. No real head tilt side to side, unfortunately, so you can't really get that sort of quizzical look out of it that I like to get. I mean, you get a little bit maybe, but not really. You don't get much down, but I will say that this piece here it tabs in, not all that securely, but it does. But you can untab it, and doing that will allow you to bring the head down, and then you can sort of cheat that he can look down from certain angles, I guess, but it's, maybe like that. But it's not great because, again, it does break the sculpt somewhat. But then you can just pop that head back in. Although, as I said, it's not very secure. It doesn't clip in with much of a satisfying pop as I would expect it to. I'm trying to do it now, and it's no, it feels tight. It doesn't feel like it's going to stick. It's all right. It's there. It's not gonna flop around all over the place. But yeah, it just feels like it's ever so slightly ill-fitting. Like it should tab in there slightly more securely, but it's there. It's there or thereabouts anyway. Moving on from that, we come to, well, for me, it's the most contentious part of this figure, this release. And that are the arms. Now, the arms themselves, when they're out of the box, they come positioned sort of like this, which is what they have to do for alt mode. So you move them down on this sliding joint here, and that's fine. And they go up to 90, which is about what you'd expect from most figures. I mean, some will go over 90, but horizontal 90 is about what you'd expect. They also have a bicep swivel, which is something you would expect. And they have a single jointed elbow, which gets you slightly over 90 degrees, which again, for a carbot of this size, you maybe would expect double, but it's okay. The hands, the wrists, I should say, they can rotate 360 as you would expect. And the hands themselves, they are largely molded. You have a molded thumb, which isn't really going anywhere. Then you have 3 fingers on a base pin, moulded, no articulation in the rest of the knuckles. And then you have an individual trigger finger, which again is moulded, and you can't really do much with that either. But all of that's pretty standard. What isn't standard, well, let me just show you. The ratchets on this sucker, I don't really know what Fans Toys were thinking. They're the sort of ratchets I'd expect to find on like an 18 to 24 inch figure that has to support a load of weight. Now, if I do this, they're not going anywhere. Yeah, they are really solid. But it's when you actually come to move it, you'll see the problem. Because they're so solid, and it's also come untabbed again, actually here, annoyingly, in between me starting this video and showing you. This piece here inside, it tabs into a couple of things. There's a notch on the top which tabs in up there, and then there's a notch on the back which tabs into this tiny little piece here. Now that is not strong enough to keep this assembly in place with the stupidly over tight ratchets that this guy has. Now they are very, very tight, way too tight for a figure of this size, just needlessly so. I mean, you can hear them, and like you can see the effort I'm having to put in to move that. That is just way, way too tight. And it's problematic because what will happen is those pieces there will pop out and they'll swing out, and they're not designed to be a butterfly joint. So, and it doesn't even look good. It breaks the sculpt. So it's not something that you can even utilize. Again, I don't really understand why they're so tight. That they're not meant, you know, you can tell that they shouldn't be. They don't need to be. You know, a soft ratchet here, even friction would have done. You can see that I'm moving that now, and it's pulling things apart. Like that's just pulled his torso apart, for God's sake, because it's so tight. You've kind of got to hold stuff as you manipulate him. Otherwise, it just feels like it's going to break. I guess once you've got him in a pose, it's not too much of an issue, but it takes the fun out of manipulating the figure in that respect. So it is a bit of a black mark, I'm afraid, Fans Toys. I don't really get what you're doing there. It was needless. Anyway, that's the biggest issue I have in terms of articulation, which I guess is pretty good all over. But anyway, moving on. He comes with the usual kind of waist rotation there. You also get a bit of an ab crunch, sort of disengages, and you get down to about there, which is pretty good. It's not terrible, is it? And I'll move these arms up there a bit. To the sides, you get manual hip skirts, front and side and back. And the leg, it can go slightly past 90 on a friction joint out to the side. And then you have nice kind of, they're clicky ratchets, but they're not overly tight. And again, if the arms had been like that, I'd have had no issue. You know, the legs aren't going anywhere, and the legs are considerably heavier than the arms. So why the arms needed to be that tight when the legs are, you know, much less so, and still hold fine. As you can see, you get a good range of motion out of those legs as well. Let's put these hip skirts down. They're obviously manual, as I said, so no auto return. You get a decent thigh rotation on him. You know, you can get all the way around there like that, which is very good. And then the knees, they have a nice deep bend in them as well. You know, not double jointed, but as much as you'll need. There is actually a joint that's utilised for transformation here. You can see this cut in the thigh. That disengages and the whole thing flops around, and that can actually happen because it's only held in by a sort of small tab on the back there, and you have to push that in through the back to get it to tab in. They come disengaged out of the box, and I was trying to get them in for a while before I realised I wasn't going to break it. They do pop out sometimes, which is annoying, but if you're careful when you move the knee, you shouldn't have too many issues, hopefully. But yeah, nice deep knee bends. You can kind of get a cool running pose out of him if you wanted. And moving on down to the final area. The one thing that has surprised me in a lot of pictures I've seen, people have been showing him in an A stance, but his feet have been flat, so he's been like kind of like that. It's a bit odd, but I don't know why, because actually he has a pretty decent toe tilt there, or ankle rocker, ankle tilt, call it what you will. So you can get him quite wide with the flat foot, which is what you need, isn't it? In terms of toe tilt, sorry, the feet are quite interesting. They have this mechanism underneath whereby this piece comes out of the foot and locks into the back piece to hold it all together. Now you can get a little bit of tilt, if you see that, by moving that up. So you do get a little bit of upwards toe tilt there, not so much down. But what you can do, I found just by accident when I was manipulating the figure, if I can actually do it on camera now, which sod's law I won't be able to, is, oh no, hold on, this is not happening now. What did I do with my spudger? I can never find it when I'm looking for it. That's the other thing. On camera, I can never find the damn thing. Let me see if I can do the other foot quickly, if that's easier. One of them was really tight to get in. The other one wasn't as bad. Oh, sorry. A better person would edit this out. Right, okay. There we go. If you disengage that piece, then all of a sudden now you've got a very large toe tilt. So you could move that forward, and you get some downward tilt as well. And obviously it's not as stable as if you have this piece locked in, but really it's not going anywhere. If you had him in the sort of pose where you needed his toe to be like that anyway, or his foot back where you wanted his toe down like that, you would have him positioned in a different manner, so it wouldn't really make much difference. So the fact that you can disengage that piece is actually quite useful, and that it does lock in as well, is also good if you are intending just to do a normal stance with him like this. You lock that back in like that, and then I haven't done that completely flush, just because I don't really need to, but yeah, that then obviously returns him to a normal stance, and there you go, all done. A couple of pieces I'd forgotten to flip round, sorry, as well. These bits here out of the box, genius me. Yeah, that's one other piece I actually forgot to do, was I forgot to flip these panels around, so I will fix that at some point before I come back with my final thoughts. Silly me. Right, let's do some accessories, shall we? I probably should have done those up front, but I wanted to actually get into the figure. He comes with a few things. I'll start off with, well, I'll tell you what, I'll start off with some of the things that I think are slightly weird. So in promo shots, he came with these radar dishes, but they were a very odd magenta, sorry, not magenta, what am I talking about? Like cyan. Really, really odd cyan colour, which was nothing like anything I'd seen in the Toon. I think in the Toon they're more of a purplish colour, his radar dishes, stroke strobes, stroke speakers, whatever they are. They've toned them down somewhat, this kind of nice like blue. I think it looks pretty sweet. But yeah, again, not quite the colour I'd envisaged, but it looks okay. And they just pop on the back here, they sort of slide over here, so you can have them attached. He says, there you go. So there you are. Those are attached and they look all right. Again, not something I'd ever used. They're from that one episode of that thing where they did that thing. I mean, I guess it's kind of his signature move, isn't it, Jazz, to have these kind of bits that he would play music out of. But I seem to remember they were more on the waist than they were on the top. And they were in the car mode as well, weren't they, as alt mode. Anyway, let's take these off, because you've seen those, and that's about all there is to say about that. He also comes with a G1 inspired missile launcher. I say inspired because the missile in G1 was kind of fatter, maybe shorter and flatter at the end. This is sort of a longer thing. I don't think any of this is detachable. It doesn't feel like it is. It feels like it's going to break if I try and remove it, so I won't. But as with the previous things, it goes over there, and then you can kind of articulate it on that one piece, as you just saw. You either have it flat like that, or it can be positioned up like that, which is fine. He also comes with another one of those, that thing he did in the episode, which is if you close his fist here and you open up the forearm, he says, open up the forearm, and then you can push the fist back in. And it only works with the right arm, I've discovered, in my quick look, just because of the shape of this here. And the pieces it needs to plug in, it won't go into the other arm. But you basically take this winch here, which he used in the More Than Meets the Eye episode, at least. I think that was the only thing I remember him using it in. And then that attaches like so, and you can, you know, retract it using this. And that's fine, isn't it? That does what it does. Again, a signature thing, a signature piece for Jazz, but not something I would use very often, if I'm completely honest. So, yeah, those bits are all good. He also comes with, I believe, is it a photon eliminator rifle? I forget. I know it shot fire, didn't it? But I'm pretty sure it was something like a photon eliminator rifle. Looks pretty Toon inspired, quite a flat grey, got quite a lot of swirl in the plastic though, so it's not painted, it's just bare plastic, but it looks all right. It's odd how they paint some weapons and others they don't. It really is. It's that their paint choices continue to confound me. It's got a kind of fairly sort of standard Masterpiece tabbing system. Let me just get that in. Hold on, what have I done here? No, I've actually done completely the wrong thing here, haven't I? How have I done that? Hold on. Right, here we go. No, do you know what I've just done? That's interesting. I was just about to do a comparison with Downbeat, and I've just picked up Downbeat's weapon. Right, okay. Scratch everything I just said. Again, I won't edit that out, you know. Being honest and all that, I just made a mistake. This is Jazz's photon eliminator rifle from Fans Toys. So this one is it looks like it may be painted. If it is bare plastic, then it's better plastic than Downbeat's. It's got a slightly different grip in that it doesn't use the typical Masterpiece side-on one. It has the rear tab, so it fits into his hand like so. He says, like so. Come on. And then, why is this not tabbing in? Yeah, it's not these. I always find these harder to tab in. They're more secure, but I find them harder to tab in than the traditional ones. But the hand just wraps around like that. Anyway, it's pretty secure. It's not going anywhere. But yeah, that's pretty Toon accurate as far as I can tell. It wasn't the most exciting weapon in the world in terms of visuals, but it does the job. It stays there. The remaining things to talk about are, well, I don't know if you can actually see his face from here. I'll lift this up, bring him in. This is his stock face, which is very stoic kind of looking Jazz. Looks fine. It's very evocative. His head sculpt and face sculpt are very good, I think. But that's the stock face that comes with him. And then hopefully I can get these to focus. These are always murder to focus, aren't they? You have... Come on. There you go. You have... Oh, God. Yeah. Got it to focus, then dropped it. Brilliant. Right. Take two. No, it won't focus, will it? There we go. Right. So you get a kind of a grinning... It's not really laughing. It is more of a grin because he's got one side of the mouth is more turned up than the other. But it's a very good looking face sculpt, I think, and yeah, very evocative of the characteristics of Jazz, I would say. You know, party guy, cool guy, all that sort of thing. Anyway, the next face is, I don't know, what would you call this? He says, as it doesn't focus again. It looks like a bit of a dismayed face, really, doesn't it? More of a concerned face, perhaps from sort of Transformers the movie, where he's on one of the moon bases and it's all gone a little bit wrong. Oh shit, what are they going to do now kind of situation. But yeah, it's more of a concerned face. I think, honestly, for me, I'm either going to stick with the stoic or maybe go with the grin. This is probably not to my taste, but it's great if you want a slightly worried looking Jazz. Okay, so that's everything that I want to show off about the figure. I just want to do a brief comparison, as I said, with Downbeat. So let's bring that figure in. Obviously, this was my Jazz for a considerable amount of time because there was nothing else that came close, really. But I think you kind of agree that it's night and day at first off, isn't it? Like, honestly, there's no real contest as far as I'm concerned. Visually speaking, if you're into the toon aesthetic, at least, Jive just destroys Downbeat. Downbeat always had a few issues anyway. I found that this whole chest section came untabbed far too often when you were manipulating things. But yeah, I mean, I guess that was the main issue. But other than that, you know, it also just looks older, doesn't it? If you look at the design all round, it's just very... It takes a lot of cues from the sort of toy design. It's a cross, isn't it? And it's just not as finessed. Just not as clean. Again, I don't want to badmouth it because it served me well. You know, it's got quite a nice tidy backpack on it for starters. But yeah, just everything else is just quite off. And also in terms of articulation, it's just got weird things, like it uses ratchets for outward movement, which I never really like because the detents are never correct, are they? They're always too widely spaced. And as such, his A stance is just weird. Like that's the sort of first natural position you can get him on an A stance. Whereas for this guy, you know, you can just do a very slight A stance, use those ankle rockers, and it's just like a far more natural stance. I mean, his chest has already started to come untabbed as well, as you'll see. I do think, obviously, the arms are on slightly better friction joints, so they don't have that issue. And he does have a good range of motion. But you'll see the chest has popped out again and split in two. This was always a problem. I don't know if it's my copy was worse than some, but it's not great. But yeah, articulation other than that is pretty comparable. It does actually have double jointed elbows, and you get a little bit more range of motion. But I'd say that broadly speaking, they're comparable. Again, he has a little bit more of an ab crunch, but a worse sculpt. It does break the sculpt more. But it's just these leg ratchets that really let it down, the outward movement. The rest of it's not too bad, as I say, kind of similar. But yeah, as you can see, you know, we're not doing a Downbeat video here, are we? But I just wanted to show you the sort of comparable range of motion. And I honestly think that it pales in comparison to Jive, and it's fallen apart again. It's kind of illustrating my point for me here, isn't it? And the head sculpt's not as good. You know, just the face sculpt isn't as good. Just things like it's just not as toon accurate, is it? And for someone like me who is very toon centric, that is important. Yeah, I think that's kind of all I wanted to say, really. Maybe I'll do. I was going to say, am I going to do comparisons with some other figures now? I'll tell you what, I'll do them in the final thoughts. So I'll get Downbeat out of the way. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get Jive here transformed. I'm not going to do it on camera. I'm not brave enough for that yet. But I'll get him transformed. We'll come back with an alt mode review. Once we've done that, I'll do a comparison with Downbeat and alt mode as well. And then we'll finish up with some final thoughts and, as I say, perhaps some comparisons with a couple of other figures for scale as well. So just bear with me. Okay, and here's Jive's alt mode. And it wasn't the most straightforward process to get here. I had a few, mishaps, shall we say. The QC sticker on the back there doesn't necessarily mean a whole amount, because when I was transforming this guy, the entire top of the figure kind of fell off, or at least one side did. There's a die-cast armature inside that is on a slider. It's held in with well, I thought they were screws, but they actually look to be pins, but threaded pins, because there's no, they're flat-headed, but they are threaded. Yeah, one popped out and half the figure was hanging off, and I thought, oh, here we go, broken. Thankfully, I was able to pop the pin back in, and it seems to be holding. I think this is going to be the one and only transformation to alt mode anyway, so as long as I can get back to bot mode after this, I'll be happy enough. But yeah, that wasn't a great experience. Quite a lot of fiddly bits as well, getting panels to line up and to click into place. But yeah, not the sort of easiest or most enjoyable transformation I've done, but not really hard and not really frustrating. So, you know, kind of sort of, you know, for fans toys, actually quite good, but for every other company, yeah, a little bit on the frustrating side. But I will say the end result is pretty cool. You know, it is a very toon accurate G1 Jazz, very plain deco as the toon cars were. I like the silver rims here. You know, again, a lot of people I know don't like how plain these decos are, but I do, because it's very evocative of the toon. And you know, the plain blue stripe with the red stripe accent. You've got the nice translucent blue windows and headlights, nice and toon accurate there. You can see there are a little bit of gap, a few little gaps here. Sorry, that they don't quite click in. It's not terrible, but again, not quite as flush as you might hope. But it's there or thereabouts all around. If I go around the back, I do like how it's pretty clean at the back there. You know, no major gaps or anything like that. Yeah, I guess, what do you say? It's a Porsche, isn't it? And it looks okay. I think there are actually a couple of little bits that I could show off. So the usual gimmick that you get with the weapons, isn't it, in alt mode, storage. You can clip the two weapons together and they go, there's a little white piece there, you can see that tabs in just over the spoiler here, and that clicks on like so. So you can have that on the back there in alt mode. I mean, I think that looks terrible. That's just me. I'm sure some people out there, enjoy these gimmicks. I don't, and I'm slightly worried that will sort of damage the spoiler as well. The other thing I think you can probably do, haven't actually tested this yet, but I am assuming from what I've seen, I need to grab one, put them away, which was a bad idea. I can obviously clip one of the speakers on as well using the same thing. Have to reorient the thing there. Yeah, that will just clip in over the side. So actually, just to demo it, if you wanted to do that thing from that episode, maybe even multiple episodes with Jazz. I can never remember how often he did this, but it was kind of his signature gimmick, wasn't it? But yeah, you just clip that on and there you go. You've got what they call radar dishes, but I guess they doubled up his speakers. Light and sound shows for him quite a lot, didn't they? So yeah, that's it. Really, that's it. That's everything there is to see in alt mode. I think it's a nice looking vehicle. I can appreciate people who don't like the toon aesthetic. They think it's too plain. But if, like me, that's your bag, then you should be very happy. I will bring in a comparison. We have Downbeat here in his vehicle mode. I should be upfront and say that I do actually have a few decals on this, so it's not completely vanilla. When I purchased it, I actually had more on. I got this one secondhand, and the person I bought it from had obviously had the sort of G1 decal set, so you can see that it's got the Martini and the Bosch there, and it had these additional accents on the bumper here, these additional stripes. You should only really have this one red stripe. There were some on the hood as well, but I removed those, and I just for some reason neglected to take the ones off of here. I did take quite a few more off as well at one point, but I got fed up. But you can see it's got more Bosch here and Bosch back there and blah blah blah. But it should give you a rough idea of what it looks like anyway. Obviously they're pretty comparable, being the same vehicle. I think they both look good. I know a lot of people have said online that they prefer this because it's more real world. You've got obviously sort of greater detailing here with the these spokes visible there on the wheels, and you know, you've got wing mirrors, etc., and probably a slightly more realistic body shape maybe, and certainly some people saying a more interesting aesthetic, particularly if you've got the decal set with it. One thing that I think Jive does better is the back of the car. You'll see that, you know, there's that was something that people always complained about, was that you had those kind of feet sticking out there and how low they were, how close they were to the ground, etc. Don't look great, do they? But I mean, not terrible, but you know, nowhere near as clean as the back of Jive here. It's a slightly lower profile, not by much. There's really not too much in it. Jive's slightly curvier, I think. Got a curvier backside, but yeah, really not too much in it. You know, you get slightly more spoiler. I guess it's a spoiler. Is it not really a spoiler? Is it? I don't know. Part of the bumper, whatever it is. I'm not a car guy. You know, that's less tune accurate than that. That's more real world. Obviously, you have the sort of blue headlights here, and you have the slightly more opaque, darker headlights and mirrors there. Sorry, not mirrors. Windshield, windows in general. I forgot to turn his head around so you can see his face through the window there. But anyway, you know, much for muchness, aren't they? They look pretty good. I'm going to keep this guy in alt mode. I have him on my alt mode duplicate shelf. So yeah, that's about all I have to say about that. Hopefully that's given you a good enough look to make a comparison. So give me a couple of seconds. I'm going to transform this guy back into bot mode and we'll do some final thoughts. Okay, and yeah, we're back in bot mode for some final thoughts. And I will say actually that the transformation to alt mode was fiddly, as I said, but getting back to bot mode was considerably easier. I didn't really have to consult the manual too much, only when I got to the legs. So well, I'll say the manual, the video review. So that was pretty good, actually. It was pretty intuitive, and I wasn't sort of a million miles away with the legs either. So as far as I'm concerned, for sort of one-off transformation in both directions, it's pretty good, at least going back to bot mode anyway. Right, there's a couple of things I wanted to point out that I forgot, as I mentioned the first time around. I neglected to point out that if you are a G1 fan, you can have the doors out if that's your preferred look. It isn't mine, but I think that was always very much a function of the toy, or a limitation of the toy, wasn't it, that the doors were out rather than it being a necessity. And I did like the cleaner way they were presented in the G1 Toon. So I prefer to have the doors folded up under here as designed. You can sort of see how they do fold up under there. And I think I've pushed that one in too much on the rocker, the sliding joint there, for it to go in properly. But then, yeah, you just pop that back down like that, and then he's back with the backpack look. And also I have sorted the legs out now, as you can see. The transformation obviously made that easier, and not quite sure why mine were like that out of the box, but there you go. But yeah, doesn't have those gaps in the thighs now either, sorry, the shins. So there we go. As promised, I said I'd do a couple of comparisons. Not going to do a huge amount, but I thought I'd do a couple of things I had to hand. One I do want to bring in, just because it's going to upset me, this. But here we go. There we go, next to Mirage. And yes, the reason this upsets me is because if you watch my Phantasm review, you'll know that I detest the way that Fans Toys decided to make Mirage blue and grey for all intents and purposes. If he'd had this kind of nice white colour, as he bloody well should have, I'd have been over the moon with this guy. But as it is, I was disappointed. Thankfully, I don't have any such disappointments in terms of the colours for Jive here. So yeah, still baffled by that decision. But together they look very good. You know, I will say that I've always, you know, contended, as I did in the review, that the silhouette on this guy, the mould itself is great. It was just the final colours that I had an issue with. But I've got no issue with the way they look in terms of the G1 styling. I think they live up to the renders in terms of how accurate they are to the models. So yeah, I do think they look very good indeed. I'm very happy with how they turned out in terms of the molds, and less happy with the coloration used for this guy, but I'm sort of learning to live with it. But yeah, no such qualms with this one. What should I bring in as well? Let me just see if I can find something worth bringing in. I think we'll go with Prime. That's always a good one. So I've got the KO, I'm afraid. I couldn't be bothered to get the official one out. But here's the KO Prime for scale. It's the same damn figure, isn't it? Let me just move the camera up a bit so you can get an idea. Fit them all in. Yeah, I think that works fairly well. I think maybe Jive is half a head potentially too tall. But, you know, it's really not that bad, is it? You can kind of give or take half a head here and there, can't you? When a figure looks this good. And I think they look good with Prime as well. And if you don't like that Prime, then here's TO1 for you as well, so you can see what they look like. Again, he's pretty much the same height, maybe a tad smaller. And he has a lower waist, that's for sure. But that is sort of where they should be sitting, sort of around waist heights, early midriff height. So I think actually scale-wise they work well with both the official and third-party primes. Is there any point bringing anything else in? I don't know. Let's get these out of the way. I suppose they were in the film together, weren't they? So I've still got my X-Transbots Magnus hanging around. So let's bring him in just so you can get a movie bot look. I will take Mirage out of the way though, because he was dead by then, I'm assuming. Let's bring Jazz forward. Let's bring Magnus forward. And obviously, Magnus being the big old bot he is, you're not going to get him in frame at the same time. But if I do that, you can see how they look together. And yeah, I think Magnus being Magnus height, that's also a good scale, isn't it? That works. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, scale wise, all is good. Let's get this fella out of the way as well. And we'll come back and do a slightly more centered pose on Jazz here. Yeah, I think all things considered, you know, I have a few minor issues with it, but on the whole, like if I sort of try and get him into a slightly more dynamic pose now, you know, he looks the part, doesn't he? And he's, I think, a really nice looking G1 representation of Jazz. It's got good articulation, it's painted well, the colours are pretty accurate, the scale's pretty accurate. The transformation's a bit fiddly going from bot mode to alt mode, but less so on the reverse journey. I think it just cleans up really well, you know, once you get all the panels into position where they're supposed to be. And it just looks really, really nice. I think from all angles, there's not an angle where I look at this and think it looks bad. So I have to say, you know, credit to Fans Toys. You know, I was very critical of them with the Phantasm colour choices, but when they get it right, they do get it right. And I think this is probably the best Fans Toys release I've had in a while. Certainly the only one that I've had in a while that I haven't had any major issues with. I try to think back to Fans Toys last few, and I don't really think I've had too many, but Phantasm obviously had issues with, and I had a few problems with everything to some degree or another, whether it's been like paint damage or whatever. You know, my Brawn, I love their Brawn, but it's mine had a misfired pin, so it scraped a lot of the paint off, which was annoying. A few little things like that I've had with their figures, which have taken the shine off. But no such qualms with this guy. Looks really, really good. Leaves me with a lot of positive thoughts about their upcoming slate. I'm really looking forward to their parkour now, their cliff jumper. That's starting to look really good now that they've changed and tweaked the colours on that as well. Definitely looks better than the mould for the Masterpiece mould from Takara anyway. So I've got that on order. I'm hoping they do a Bumblebee as well, because if they can make their Bumblebee look as good as their cliff jumper, then that will replace MP45, was it? Yeah. But anyway, not too much more to say about this. If you're in the market for a Jazz, this is definitely the best one for my money. Really nice figure all told. One of the best I've handled this year, I have to say. I think perhaps no, I'm not even going to nitpick to that point. As I said, maybe half a head too tall, but it's so negligible. It's just not even worth worrying about. Other than that, it's a great figure. Yeah, that's about everything in terms of Jive or Jive related. I will be back hopefully before the end of the year with a review of Inventor Magna. I've had that for a while now as well, but what with that being an older figure, even though it's the Toon re-release, I wanted to get Jive done first, so I jumped on that one. Took the opportunity tonight when I'm not that busy, and I do want to get to Inventor Magna though, so look out for that hopefully before the end of the year. Obviously it's 2 figures in one and quite a big bot, but I should be able to make it if things quiet down over the Christmas period. Other than that, I don't think we're going to see a bad one this side of Christmas now, sadly. I was really hoping that would arrive to go with Magnus, but it looks like it's going to be New Year now, which is probably better for my wallet though, to be honest. Took a bit of hammering recently. But yeah, that's what I've got coming up. I'm planning to get a few more, as I said, parkour. I'm going to get the Takara Skyfire as well, and there'll be others as well, I'm sure, that pop out of the woodwork. I really do kind of want a decent Devastator, but can I go in on 6 Constructicons? I don't know. It's a lot of money. I've got to wait so long. Like if they just released it in a gift set for 600-700 quid, I'd buy it. But anyway, enough of me rambling. Thanks for sticking with me. I hope this has been informative and you've got a few things out of this that you hadn't got from other reviewers. Thanks for watching. It just remains for me to say, if I don't speak to you before Christmas or New Year, to have a great one of both. It's been a difficult year all round, hasn't it? And it's probably not going to get too much better in 2023, at least early doors. So I think we all need a bit of time to relax, recharge. And it's just nice that some of us are lucky enough. I do appreciate we are lucky to be in this privileged position to be able to buy these things when some others are struggling for even basic necessities. But it is nice to have these distractions from everyday life, isn't it? Just to indulge in a little bit of fantasy from time to time. So I do appreciate my privileged position in being able to do this, and my thoughts are with those of you less fortunate. But yeah, don't want to end on a completely downer note, so I will say again, it's been fun doing these videos over the last year, and I'm hoping to bring more of them in 2023. Hope you'll stick with me for those, and yeah, just remains me to say yet again, thanks for watching and take care, everyone.